Welcome back to Never Did It. I'm Brad Garoon, and I'm here with Jake Ziegler. On Never Did It, we look back at the last 100 years plus of movie history in an effort to fill in some of our own movie blind spots. And right now, we're in the middle of our mini-series, Ladies Wow, the female-directed movies of the last century. And we're still trudging through the rarefied territory where only a few women were leading the films. Now we're into the 1940s. We have a very special guest, Maren Moreno, who I was so excited when I found her videos on TikTok actually talking about movies from the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, because so few people are actually talking about these movies that we love. So I'm so excited that you were open to coming on. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a delight to be here.
Let's start lighter with the movie that Jake, you recommended for us, Ida Lupino's Not Wanted.
Yes, Not Wanted. I knew Ida Lupino had been a bit of a name director in the 1950s. So when we were looking at the 40s, I saw her name pop up. I was like, oh yeah, I recognized that name, and that was really about all it took. Like you already alluded to, there was not a ton of options from the 1940s. So just seeing any sort of recognizable name was like, yeah, that's probably one that we should hit. And it sounded very much like a plot wise it sounded almost like a bit noirish, but also a bit like melodrama-ish. So I felt like it kind of hit a couple of different things from the decade that would be interesting to look at. So that was kind of what it is. The name recognition was the big piece.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one because she is not the credited director on this movie, but she
Right.
is the director of this movie. The credited director is Elmer Clifton, but he died. He had a heart attack a couple of days into filming, and that didn't kill him instantly, but he couldn't run the movie anymore. Ida Lupino, who had co-written the movie and was co-producing the movie, took over, and then this started her directorial career, which is like a pretty interesting story, but it's funny watching the credits. I was like, does this qualify?
I have to tell you, I did not watch this movie because I watched Dance Girl Dance.
Here's what happened. Because Elmer Clifton was the credited director on this movie,
Yes.
I made a switch that I told you about and didn't plug it in our spreadsheet correctly.
Oh no.
So wait, let's start with Dance Girl Dance. This is really interesting. So,
I had a minor heart attack there.
no. This is 100% my fault, not your fault.
Okay, phew.
I haven't seen Dance Girls Dance.
So we didn't end up watching Dance Girl Dance. The reason that I wanted us to talk about Dance Girl Dance, and I'm going to full disclosure, I have not seen Dance Girl Dance as of this. But the reason I wanted to talk about it was because it's directed by Dorothy Arzner. Dorothy Arzner is like sort of the thing that is connecting these early episodes from this season.
That's so cool.
We haven't reviewed a movie of hers yet on the podcast, but I've talked about on a couple episodes her movie Merrily We Go to Hell. Pretty good movie and pretty famous. And then after Arzner stops directing movies, major studios don't hire women to direct any major movies until the early 1970s. Well, Elaine May is hired in the late 1960s, but A New Leaf doesn't come out until the early 70s. So Arzner is like the last gasp of women directing major Hollywood films for 3 decades. Yeah. So Maren, we're at a loss, but before we get into our conversation about Not Wanted, tell us about Dance Girl Dance.
I love Ida Lupino, by the way. Love her. Think she's amazing. Have you guys seen The Trouble with Angels, which she directed in the 1960s?
No.
That's an amazing piece that you guys should definitely check out. So, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I did look. All her movies are available too. I mean, she directed, I think, 7 features, and they're like, except for one. I think one's not, but like most of her movies are like pretty available to watch. So that's cool.
And The Trouble with Angels has Rosalind Russell in it.
Oh,
and Haley Mills. And it takes place in a convent.
How many Haley Mills are in it, though?
Just the one this time.
Just the one, okay.
Although Maureen O'Hara is in Dance Girl Dance, so that's like a Parent Trap follow-up.
That's so interesting. I've never screwed up this badly on one of our podcasts before, but can you tell us? I had this thing in the back of my head where I was like, I'm pretty sure I made a change. And then whatever, no one needs to know about that except us. Tell us more about Dance Girl Dance. What do you think?
Let me talk about Dance Girl Dance. Okay, so I had seen clips of this film because it has a really famous dance scene with Lucille Ball in it. So I had seen those clips. I'm a huge I Love Lucy fan. So I had seen those clips. And then I got a chance to watch this movie. And you guys, it is so good. I really, really enjoyed it. So the storyline is basically these 2 dancers. One is Lucille Ball. One is Maureen O'Hara. They are part of a dance troupe. Okay, so Lucille Ball's name is Bubbles. That's her nickname. And Maureen O'Hara's name is Judy. All right, so Judy is like this young up-and-comer. She's very earnest. She is like wants to be a ballerina. And then we have Bubbles, who is like burlesque, right? So we've got this dichotomy. And essentially what happens is Judy ends up becoming the stooge in Bubbles' big act that is like burlesque. But the movie is really delightful. How would I describe it? It has musical elements, but it really is about like women not competing against each other, kind of like they don't get along. Let's make it clear. They're like sisters where it's like you want to kill the person, but you also want them to be okay in the end. So there's that dynamic. It has some great musical numbers. I would totally recommend that. I was looking at, let's see, Ralph Bellamy plays like the second up guy, and he's really good. Now, the movie, I would call it like Run, Judy, Run, because basically there's a love interest who is the biggest red flag I've ever seen. Luckily, she doesn't end up with him. Sorry, spoilers. But yeah, it's a great number. I totally recommend it to you guys. Great movie.
Well, Ralph Bellamy's in it, so I'm going to watch because I'm like a massive Trading Places fan.
Oh, yes. Isn't he so wonderful in that?
Yeah, he's great. And we reviewed a movie of his for the podcast where he kind of plays like the loser boyfriend who gets sort of, His Girl Friday. He's in His Girl Friday.
His Girl Friday is the one that I feel like I know him best from.
The way you're describing this movie, it sounds a lot to me like, did either of you see The Last Showgirl, the Pamela Anderson movie that came out last year?
I think you're right. I think you're right about the dynamics there.
Yeah, it's a really similar deal where, they've got this sort of found family, but they're not really in competition with each other because their business is failing anyway, but they do snipe at each other a lot. And I think there's a lot of resentment of like the younger girls looking at the older women and like worrying that will be their future.
Yes. And actually there were two elements that I wanted to talk about on this. One of them is there's an amazing speech by Maureen O'Hara that she gives when the burlesque number goes wrong and the men are laughing at her. And what is so cool about this film is that it's very much like it examines the male gaze and it kind of makes fun of it. It kind of says like, who's in power really? Is it the men in the audience or is it the women who are on stage doing these burlesque numbers? And the men are like, when you see them, their faces are kind of like caricatures. They're kind of overdrawn. They're bizarre looking. And then Maureen O'Hara has this absolutely amazing speech where she says like, who do you think is in charge? Like, you guys pay 50 cents to look at us. Like, your wives won't let you look at them. And then you go home and you can feel like you're in control for a little while, but you're not. And we laugh at you. It was just a phenomenal. I mean, like today I would be like, that's a great monologue. Yeah. But like seeing it in this time period, 1940, unbelievable. And then Maureen O'Hara is like 20, and Maureen O'Hara was really intimidated by Lucille Ball. Like really intimidated because Lucille Ball was the queen of the B pictures. She'd done a ton. Maureen O'Hara is coming in. This is very early on in her career, but they actually ended up becoming friends. And you can feel that dynamic. Lucille Ball is phenomenal in this. The character that she does could be like a stereotype, but she creates such warmth in it. And then there's a second number that if you get a chance to watch it, it's the Jitterbug number. I'm going to get the name wrong, but Lucille Ball does this incredible number and you're watching her and you're going, oh my gosh, Lucy's in the show. Lucy finally made it in the show and she's really good. And she is just phenomenal in it. It's costumed so smartly. She's wearing like a big fur coat and this incredible skirt that allows her legs to be totally visible. It is just very tactile. It's like the men want to reach out and touch her, but they can't. She is up there on stage. She's completely in her element. It honestly, I really enjoyed it. You guys should watch it. It's good.
Yeah, well, now we'll have to because this is now officially becoming a Never Did It movie. So we'll have to swing back around. I don't think about like the fact that Lucille Ball had this almost, decade and a half career before Desi Arnaz.
She was always in B pictures. She would be like the lead in a B picture, and then she would be a side character in like an A-list film. Yeah. So that kind of became her dynamic. But I also read up on it. Apparently, this was the first time that Desi saw her. They have a big fight scene between the two women, and I guess a ton of actors crowded into the filming to watch it. And that was the first time that he saw her. Was in this.
It's a very important movie in the history of television, at least.
Exactly. You kind of see the early elements of her. Like, to do what she did in I Love Lucy, you have to be really talented, right? You have to be like there's a certain amount of choreography to it. There's a certain amount of like specificity. And you get to see that in this film. And there's another number. Oh, sorry. There is a hula number. It is one of the sexiest things I have ever seen on film. Honestly, like the way she performs it is phenomenal. You're going to love it. It's really good. Thank you for making me watch it.
Yeah, for sure. In an episode that we recorded that's going to air a few weeks from now, our guest asked us, do you feel the fingerprints of a woman on this movie? Like, can you tell that this is a movie that was directed by a woman? And it sounds like very much so in this case.
100%. There's a couple times where it's like, oh, a woman filmed this. There's a lot of the dynamics between the women. The dynamics are so interesting because like they're having a fight, but she's powdering her back to get ready for the routine. There is a lot of variety in the characters who are women. None of them are stereotypes, and they all could be. Like it would be very, very easy. Another thing that I don't know why, but I think female directors do this sometimes is the male gaze, right? Noticing that. And then also there's a part where Maureen O'Hara looks in a mirror. She's kind of having a little bit of a breakdown, a sad moment. And there's just so much breathing space in it. There's like a sense of like, don't rush it. Just have this moment. And that happens again and again. There's a lot of like, it's about the connections between the characters. There's a lot of silence. There's a lot of like breathing space. And I don't know if that's a female thing, but it does feel like there's a certain amount of camaraderie there that is just really fun to see.
Well, I think there's something to that, because if you think about where do we see those kinds of moments in movies now, they're in like the sort of stereotypical slow cinema kind of movies. And most of those are directed by, not most, but a lot of the famous ones are directed by women. In fact, we're going to be talking about in a couple of weeks, Jean Dillman, the movie that's right now at the top of the Sight and Sound list. So we've watched that, and we can say it's a bit of a spoiler for an episode that comes out in a few weeks. That movie is just someone doing chores and being quiet for 3 hours, over 3 hours.
I've seen clips of this. I have seen clips of this.
I think you've gotten the gist if you've seen clips. I mean, that's what I'll say at this point, is like, it's a whole lot of movie, and we're all just living that life.
Right? Well, it feels like my life. Honestly, I'm a stay-at-home mom, so this feels, feels very real to me.
Well, I can't tell you, I don't know you that well, but I can guess that part of the movie is not your life as a stay-at-home mom.
I'm hoping.
There is like a thing that makes it not just someone doing chores all day. But yeah, there's a ton of breathing space in that movie. And I was thinking, like, I just watched Meek's Cutoff, which is about, women going through the West, these women trailblazers. The movie is focused on the wives of these men who like don't really know what they're doing or where they're going in the Old West. But it's mostly like people doing chores and like feeling stressed out and that kind of thing.
Oh, I love it. I'm going to check it out.
We'll, as quickly as possible, run through the movie that we accidentally watched. So Ida Lupino's Not Wanted, which I will say does not really feel like it has the fingerprints of a woman on it. And I'm not surprised, because Lupino, for one, decided that Elmore Clifton would retain his director's credit. And I think she tried to, at least for this one, make the movie the way she thought he would make the movie. And yeah, Jake, like you said, it is very melodramatic. It's a little noirish. It's funny because Ida Lupino is the woman credited with like directing the first female-led noir, which came, I think, like 8 years later with The Hitchhiker. But in this one, yeah, this woman falls in love with a piano player, gets pregnant, follows him to Capital City, which is a fun way to talk about Los Angeles, California, something that is obviously Los Angeles, California. But all I could think about was The Simpsons the entire time. Every time anyone
mentioned, I keep singing. I was singing the song the whole time. Capital City.
Yeah. I'm sure this is another, like, maybe I have long COVID or something, because my memory is weird, where I was like, I read a synopsis of this movie that said a woman falls for a piano player, gets pregnant, but then is obsessed over by his strange friend. So the whole movie, I'm waiting for this strange friend to show up. But the other guy in the movie is actually like really nice. There is no other shoe that drops. And I kept waiting for this other shoe to drop. He's just nice to her. He makes model trains. I thought, like, oh, he's like a creepy guy who makes model trains. Nope, that's just his hobby.
It's a nice hobby.
Yeah. And he's very good at it. I thought this was like pretty cute, but very pearl clutching of a movie. She's pregnant, then the world ends. She goes to stay at the convent. And the part that really did it for me, though, was, so let's just spoil
Go for it,
Not
please.
Wanted. She ends up giving her baby away because she doesn't want her baby to grow up without a dad and be teased and called a bastard. Although she wouldn't dare say that word because it's a very Christian movie. And when she regrets that decision and goes back, one of the nuns or women running the orphanage or whatever reads her a letter about how the parents of the baby are so happy that they got it. They took the baby to be baptized, and it was almost as if the baby knew he was entering this covenant with God that would make him good for the rest of eternity. And I was like, oh, wow, this is such a product of its time. But it goes by fast. It's pretty zippy. I didn't think it was bad. It felt very like they didn't take any chances. There were no chances taken with a pretty controversial topic. Even they sort of like played it safe.
Yeah, it's a pretty run of the mill type of movie. I'd almost describe it as like workmanlike, where it's like there's nothing like particularly wrong with me. It's put together well. It's it's shot well, and the acting is mostly good. Again, considering the time period and everything. So yeah, it's just a solid movie, and I think it is worth mentioning the guy who plays the piano player, the older gentleman, Leo Penn, is the father of Sean Penn.
Oh,
I had no idea that he was an actor. Like the Sean Penn's dad was an actor. Sean Penn, yeah, his dad Leo. I looked at him like two different places to make sure that that was correct. It's like, yeah, Leo Penn is the guy, and that's Sean and Chris and Michael Penn's dad.
Sean Penn is a nepo baby then.
Yeah.
Oh well, that I knew, but I always thought they were related to Arthur Penn, the director.
Nope.
I got the nepo baby wrong.
Yeah. And then I went back and looked at the actor playing. I'm like, oh yeah, looks like him. I mean, he looks like a mix of Sean and Chris.
Either of these movies, did Dance Girl Dance or Not Wanted get any Oscar attention?
No,
Not
I don't
Wanted
think.
didn't. I don't know about Dance Girls Dance. Not Wanted certainly didn't.
I think Dance Girl Dance had a good reception. I think it was received well.
I think Not Wanted was also, especially considering the Richard Roper, I think, gave it a really good review. Obviously, much later, more than I would give it. I mean, what he was talking about, and I do think that he was talking about how technically it's really well done, especially for someone's first movie. There's this cool chase scene at the end where the nice guy is chasing, not nice guy in like internet speak, like an actual nice guy. He's chasing Sally because she's still in her, she almost gets arrested for kidnapping another baby, but out of the kindness of the other woman's Christian heart, and because of the double jeopardy law, which doesn't really apply.
And it's another movie I should point out in the 40s where like there's got to be a court scene involved, like something with the courts. Like I guess people were like really obsessed with this in the 30s and 40s.
Dance
Like,
ends with a court scene.
All
Dance
the time.
And the judge comes off as very nice, right? Miracle on 34th Street ends with a court scene. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes ends with a court scene.
We were talking about recently how not even just court scenes, but like night court specifically.
In Dance Girl Dance.
Amazing. For them, it's like, it's so urgent. We have to get to court right now. It must happen now. Yeah, night court. Big staple of golden age of Hollywood films.
My favorite part is all the people who are in the background. The
People showing up for night court just to watch. Good date night. So I'm actually kind of glad this happened because I didn't have that much to say about Not Wanted, but I did have a lot to say, and I'm sure we all do, about our next movie, The Last Stage. So I picked this one. I have a lot of history here. I'm the descendant of Holocaust survivors. I'm very interested in this. And this movie is considered the mother of all Holocaust movies in that it probably is the first movie to deal with so explicitly the atrocities of the concentration camps during World War II. This was directed by Wanda Jakubowska, who was in Auschwitz as a prisoner and then filmed this at Auschwitz, which is just an insane thing to think about. I read that she stayed in the house that is portrayed in the movie Zone of Interest. She stayed in Rudolf Hess, the guy who ran Auschwitz for the majority of its existence. She stayed in his home, and the crew stayed in the barracks that the SS would have stayed in while they were living there. They obviously didn't make them stay where, a lot of those buildings were burned down as the Soviets were closing in at the end of World War II. A lot of they were trying to cover up what happened. In any event, this movie is basically, if you've seen Schindler's List, this is not that Schindler's List doesn't focus on women, it really does, but this is a more female-centric movie about what happened in the camps. It's sort of told from multiple points of view, which I actually found pretty hard to follow at first, and then once I got the hang of it, it was a little bit, like it took a long time for me to figure out who all the characters were, especially because it's not in English. But this was Jakubowska's first movie, so you can see a bit of like a novice hand in this, but it's also told in a nightmarish kind of way where out of nowhere violence will break out and go on for a long time. And I was really affected by it by the end. The main plot is that you have these few women who are trying to protect each other and escape. By the end, there's an escape plan. And like, what will they do when the Russians arrive? And some of them are afraid of the Russians arriving. I don't know. I've been talking for a long time. Before I talk anymore, Maren, what did you think of the movie?
Okay, so first, I hate you guys for making me watch this.
Sure.
And also, you guys know how to show a girl a good time. I will say this. I think everyone should see this film. I think this is a film that should be required viewing for life. Every high school, I think when they teach world history, should be showing this film. And it's shocking to me that I did not know about this film. Like, I actually work as a tutor. I work as like a history and English tutor. And the fact that I've never heard of this shows a lot about politics and a lot about the fact that this was a Soviet film. So like it never got the push or the play, even though it did so well when you look at like the awards that it won and everything like that. But the fact that we don't talk about it in schools, that's shocking to me. I was blown away by this. I couldn't look away. I watched it all in one go because I was like, we're in this now. There's going to be images that I do not forget from this for sure. As a mother, so I have 2 small children. Watching this was very difficult, watching the woman give birth in this, but it is an element that I honestly think about, right? Because as a mother, when you think about the Holocaust, that's the first thing that comes to my mind is like, what did that feel like to have your children ripped out of your arms? What is that experience? And I think today, the things that are happening in our country today, everyone should watch this because what is happening now is a reflection of then. And at the end of the movie, the call out is it will never revive, right?
Yeah.
And I think we all need to be watching this right now.
In fact, it actually struck me as, well, you have to put it in like the context of time. I think if this were to come out now and the last line of the movie is never let there be another Auschwitz, it would be like, okay, well, we know that there are already so many atrocities that have happened since the Holocaust happening now. It's a little on the nose, but it certainly wasn't on the nose then in 1949 when they're really fresh out of it. Jake, what did you think?
I was also mad at you because I didn't know anything about this movie. You know, like
you recommended Schindler's List. I had never seen Schindler's List, and on this podcast, you made me watch that. So we're even now.
Okay, but you were well aware of what Schindler's List was before. Like this movie, Maren, like you, I wasn't familiar with it. I hadn't heard of it. Even looking up her other films, Jakubowska, she directed like about a dozen other movies. You can't stream any of them anywhere, including this one. You know, they're not available to watch anywhere. So
in the United States, outside the United States, Mubi is streaming this movie.
Oh, really?
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, for us in the States, you know, there's no easy way to access. I mean, we found it pretty easily, but I mean, like it's not streaming on any of the major platforms. So I'm not surprised that, you know, a lot of people don't know about this movie, you know, myself included. And I do a thing, you know, whether it's on the podcast or outside of the podcast, like I don't watch trailers. I try not to find out much about a movie at all. Like when Brad recommends a movie to me that I haven't seen frequently, you know, I'll at least have some idea of what it is. But in the case of some of these older movies, you know, I'm not as familiar with it. So I didn't even know this was a Holocaust movie before I started watching it. You know, I took the afternoon off work yesterday. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to watch this movie, make sure I, you know, devote my time to it and everything so that we can record today. And yeah, I was upset for a while and I mean, just deeply affected by this movie. Also, I did not do it in one sitting. That doesn't have as much to do with the movie as much as my current injury after falling off my porch steps.
Jake he has a bruise on his butt. He's okay.
I have a bruise. Yeah, I have a bruise on it, and it's like turning colors now. It's disgusting.
Oh no,
it's awful.
We don't have to get that deep into it.
But I could have watched it once. You know, what I mean, like I could have watched it once today. I mean, it's engrossing. It does take a minute to get used to the characters, but then I felt like once you got it, like once you're with them, it's like okay, then their personalities and like who they were really started to come through. And like by the end of it, you know, I could have picked all of them out of a lineup. You know, who was who and everything. The movie we covered and we recorded it a while ago, but last week in the 30s when we were covering Mädchen in Uniform was another movie where like you had almost like a dozen nearly main characters and they were all had these very distinct personalities and very distinct looks and everything in it they were, and that's not always the case with a lot of these older movies.
I think this movie is really interesting to look at contrasted with Schindler's List, which it obviously deeply influenced. I wrote this in my Letterboxd review, and I only bring that up to say I'm not coming up with this off the cuff. I thought about this a lot, where I think it's really interesting. These are both Jewish directors who had very different objectives when examining what happened. For Spielberg, with 50 years of time passed, and also Spielberg wasn't a direct victim of what happened. Part of what he's interested in is not just telling people what happened, but also talking about the why of it and the how of it. Like, why are the Nazis acting this way? How were they able to get away with it? How did the Germans let them, and also all Europeans, just run roughshod over this country with, yes, there was a lot of resistance. And I actually think that the amount of resistance that took place, in fact, this is the only Holocaust movie I can think of where there is a lot of resistance happening in the camps. A lot of movies make Holocaust victims out to be sort of non-humans, just victims.
Right.
Here, these are real people who are constantly thinking of ways to fight back in big and small ways. And I would say Spielberg is right to be interested in the things he's interested in. But what Jakubowska is interested in, and the other writer of this movie, Gerda Schneider, is what happened. Because the world didn't know. The Russians did not really report on what happened in the camps when the camps were liberated. It actually wasn't until the Americans got to the camps that it became widespread what the atrocities were. So like you said, Maren, this was a Russian, I think it was even like a Soviet-financed film.
It was.
Right, but that means that, you know, they had their agenda, and I actually don't see the Soviet agenda in this movie, which I think is really powerful.
Oh, I think you do a little bit with the Stalin speech that's on the radio.
Well, fair enough, but there are characters, and maybe I'm getting a little confused about who the characters are, but there are characters who are saying things like, I'd rather stay in this prison than have to worry about the Bolsheviks arriving.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Yeah.
But where I find this movie super interesting is one thing Spielberg does is he examines the pathology behind the capo, which were Jewish and Polish prisoners who were given responsibilities by the Nazis. And in this movie are incredibly violent, and probably in real life were incredibly violent. And now in the Jewish community, I can tell you, when a Jew calls another Jew a capo now, it's the biggest insult. And this movie really shows you why. Because there are like these harrowing scenes where violence breaks out and the capos just start clubbing the other prisoners and like pushing them into place. There's no room for any mistakes or slowness. They're shoving them into mud, and then they're trading favors with each other and trading medicine with each other that was, there from the Red Cross for prisoners. And I just found it interesting that this movie has not more of a grudge. I mean, being mad at Nazis is evergreen. Unfortunately, there are plenty of people now who are not mad enough at Nazis anymore.
Right,
but
agree, yes.
I think Spielberg was mad at the Nazis as well. He was very furious with like the Nazi effort. But this movie is particularly mad at the Nazis and their collaborators, and there's no room for any forgiveness. A lot of people who were these capos at the time were tried as collaborators and either put to death or life in prison. This movie has that energy, like the energy of the time. We're not reflecting. We're getting justice for the people who were affected. Like both of you, I'm really upset that this movie has been memory hold in the United States.
Yes.
I totally agree with you, Maren, that I do think there are political reasons that this has happened, especially because it is so readily available outside the United States. But you can't even it's not on DVD. I mean, a DVD was made, I think 12, 13 years ago. It's fully out of print. It costs over $100 now if you want to buy it online. That's not accessible.
Don't get me started on streaming and like analog and all that, because
Sure.
I think that there is a big issue that when we allow streaming services to tell us what we're going to watch, we're giving up a lot of our autonomy, right?
Totally.
That's the thing. I did a project this year where I was going to only watch movies that I wanted to watch. Even if I had to buy them, even if I had to go out and find them, I was going to only do movies, not doing streaming anymore, not going to that screen and doing it, because I don't like the idea of somebody deciding what I can and cannot watch.
I'm on board with that. This all started because I'm really into Walter Matthau and I wanted all of Walter Matthau's movies on disc.
Huge fan.
Amazing. I got all the Walter Matthau movies that exist on disc. And then I was like, I should have all of my favorite movies on disc. It's becoming a bit of a problem, but I am 100% on board with your mission here. This is the way to go.
I do a lot of thrifting. So I'll go to thrift stores and find the old DVDs that have been tossed away. In my house, we grew up, that was like what you were allowed to buy as much as you wanted of. Everything else was more limited, but it was like, if you had a DVD you really wanted, my mom is a huge movie fan, so that was always allowed.
Yeah.
But coming back to the film, I wanted to say, I think this film is as close as you can get to a historical document. I don't know how you could get closer.
You have the people who were there making the film. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, obviously now it would be impossible. There are almost no survivors left. You read now about how 1 in 4 American young people is anti-Semitic, and these are the people who admit it. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. I'm not going to get into like my theories about it, except that when you don't have survivors living anymore, there's no actual people who were there telling you the story, then it becomes like, I saw someone ask, when is Hitler going to become like Genghis Khan? Because there are people who will look at Genghis Khan and be like, he was obviously a brutal killer, probably one of the worst in the history of the world, but we don't feel in our guts about him the way we feel about Hitler. And it is clear now that is the trajectory.
Absolutely.
You can't keep someone a boogeyman like that forever, especially when his victims are no longer alive. I agree. I wish there was a better way for people to watch this. It's a streaming solution, but it is a solution. Jake came up. Letterboxd has now a video store, and their whole idea is just more streaming. Are you on Letterboxd, Maren?
I just joined.
Okay, good. Start a list on Letterboxd and put the tag Video Store Rex in your list. And any movie that you think, we got to get the last stage going. And so that's the main one.
Right. Well, I have to tell you, I literally just started posting about movies 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I've been a lifelong movie lover, loved it my whole life, always watched old films, always was, in the movie theater growing up. And then that kind of slowed down. I think in the last 10 years, I stopped going to the movies, really. I stopped, watching.
You and everyone else.
Right? Like everybody else. And then I realized, I'm like, this is something that I really miss. And it adds so much to my life. So this is just so exciting to be here, honestly, again.
Great. The only other thing I feel like I have to touch on, I'll leave it to you guys after this, that I have to touch on is how unflinching this movie is. Like you mentioned the baby. One of the first acts of violence in the movie is the euthanizing of this baby, which I wasn't expecting, because I wasn't in the first half hour, maybe even hour, I didn't fully have a grasp of the tone. And as soon as he takes out that syringe and walks toward that baby, I was like, oh, it's Schindler's List. I get it. We're not going to pull any punches. I mean, there's no gore, but we're not going to pull any punches about how these people are treated. In fact, the scene of the prison doctor, the real doctor, being strung up by her wrists behind her back. I could not believe that happened that they showed that in a movie pre-1970. That really was disturbing.
And the part with the baby, so it's going to be like, I don't know if it's TMI, but when I had my first child, I had postpartum anxiety. And I accidentally looked up what happened to babies during the Holocaust and things that were done to them. This is very, very realistic.
Sure.
To what happened. And so seeing that and like seeing like, oh, okay, that's where we're going to be. And this is accurate. The other scene that I think is so powerful is the mother who's basically asking to be euthanized because she cannot stop remembering her children.
Right.
The 3 children, she's like, I have 3 children. They were pulled from me. I have a heartache. And they make her kind of comedic, almost like, oh, she's taking advantage. But the truth is that all these women in that camp, and when they are holding her up, when she is about to give birth, when they are like, all the women are like holding her up, there is so much camaraderie between the women. And again, it's something you see also in girl dance to a different extent, but there is a feeling of like, we're in this together and we're going to hold you up. And yes, there are the couple, there are the people like that. But then there's also almost like a relay race with these women where it's like, we're going to get our goal across the finish line. Like we're going to work together to get where we need to be, even if not all of us make it. Along the way, which is so powerful.
When I was in Hebrew school, and I have this memory very vividly of being like 9, 10 years old and being told the story of what happened to babies during the Holocaust. When you're a young person in an active Jewish community, these stories were told to you. I don't know what it's like now. I was a Hebrew school teacher decades later, but I wasn't teaching about the Holocaust. I was like literally teaching people Hebrew. So it's a different, thank God, I'm not the person to teach that lesson. I grew up hearing about these things. And so it's always surprising to me when I meet people like, and I also grew up in a very, very diverse, in suburban Detroit, very diverse community. So when I meet people who are not from diverse communities, who didn't know any of this stuff growing up because the community doesn't have people with a vested interest in it, it blows my mind. The other thing is that camaraderie, I think, is the most important part of this movie. The first time I cried watching this was not the baby getting shot and not the violence, but when the French women are transported away and they start singing the French national anthem.
Chills. I had chills.
Yes, I started bawling. I was like, music does this to me in general, but that part I was like, oh my God. And also that I think it was when I decided that this was an important movie, not just.
Well, isn't there the quote from Night where it's like, you don't have a choice about like going in, but you have a choice about how like you can go into the gas chambers free.
Right.
Like, if you choose, like, and I think that was that moment. And the fact that they understand this I mean, obviously these women understand it because they just, survived it.
Right.
But I also wonder what was it like for them to film in Auschwitz, to be back in that space? Because that has to be intense. I mean, these women are so brave to go back into that world after just leaving it. And I remember reading an interview with Jakubowska that she said basically the idea for this film came about when she was leaving the gates.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, she's like, I am going to make this film. And honestly, she even said that it was partly what helped her survive. What kept her alive was like, I'm going to survive and I'm going to share this story.
This is like one of my, I think, annoying takes now is like, there's too much discourse about everything. I think if you were to do something like this now, people would call you exploitative. In fact, it's sort of happening this year with The Voice of Hind Rajab. I haven't seen the movie yet. It's supposed to be amazing, but it's about a little girl who was caught in a car in Gaza or under some rubble in Gaza, and she left these real voicemails. And I think the movie uses her real voicemails. Now, granted, the general take on this movie is that it's a masterpiece. But I am seeing people say like, this is exploitative. This isn't what movies are. And my feeling is, however you feel about the Israel-Palestine issue, people who have experienced it have the right to tell their story however they want to tell their story.
Absolutely.
And I think that's true of The Voice of Hind Rajab, and I think it's very true of The Last Stage.
Well, sometimes I think we create too much distance for ourselves, right? We're like, we'll talk about this when we have our whole clean perspective on it. And it's like, sometimes that's just not the way it is. And like, I think that's something that's missing sometimes from movies today, is there's such a long production lineup, right? Like, so it takes so long to make a movie that sometimes maybe that distance, there is a feeling of urgency to this film. There is a feeling of this has to be released now. It was made so close to when the actual events occurred. And I think there's a power in that. And watching the film, I was definitely struck by that.
You even see that now in like Eddington. People are like, oh, it's too soon to talk about COVID. It's not too soon to talk about COVID, man. Like, come on. This is a huge thing that just happened to us. We all have feelings about it. We should be talking about it.
Well, look, this film came out in a similar time period to It's a Wonderful Life, which is my favorite movie of all time. Oh. And that movie, it's talking directly about the war that is happening right then. Right. And there's a feeling because of that, it feels more realistic.
Another movie. Have you seen The Best Years of Our Lives?
That's one of my, I adore that film. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, we
Amazing.
covered that on this show, and that
we
was
do
what we
too.
kept
We
saying
right
about
now.
it. It was
The
like,
power of that film and the fact that they're showing things that, again, not to bring it back to childbirth, but they say, like with childbirth, you will forget. And you do. You forget a lot of it. Like your brain literally puts out hormones and things to help you forget how crazy it is so that you will do it again. And I think with this movie or with The Best Years of Our Lives, it's like doing it closer to when all these things are happening. You're not going to lose some of the memories and some of the things that happen in the film, The Last Stage. So like the music playing, and you know that has to be true.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because as I was watching it, all I could think was, is this a dream? Like, I actually wasn't sure that it was meant to be real.
No, I think it reminds me of the things they carried, that book, because they say about in war, like the craziest things are the truest things. And so that element I also thought was really powerful, was talking about the fact that, and I hadn't really thought about this, how many different languages are spoken in that camp.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And and that becoming an interpreter becomes this means of power in a sense, right? And agency. It was, again, really interesting to me.
I thought it was very helpful, although this is so gross what I'm about to say, because it's saying something the Nazis did was helpful. But the Nazis were sticklers for detail, which is actually part of the reason why we know what happened. But it was also helpful as identifying different characters because they were labeled differently. Like the Poles had the P, the Jews had their stars, the Serbs had their different badge. So, and the capos all wore their thing, and the doctors wore their thing. Everyone's like very clearly labeled by their clothes, which was a way of sorting people outside the camps and in the camps.
Yes.
In fact, I was a little confused because one thing that's not talked about here, and I wasn't surprised, was that gay people had to wear a pink triangle. That was outside the camps, like in the community, to identify them so that they could be rounded up later, just like Jews had to wear yellow stars. And I mistook the Polish badge for that. And I was like, wow, this is so progressive, this movie from 1949. Jake, what are we missing?
I don't think we're missing anything. There are so many scenes. I mean, we know those scenes. Yeah, when they started singing the French anthem, I mean, I love it when they do it in Casablanca, but this is an even more, impactful moment. Yeah, it's a deeply affecting movie. In fact, when it was over, I took a nap. I can't be with my thoughts right now. Yeah, I'm going to go take a little nap for a while. So yeah, I mean, this movie should be seen on a wider scale. The fact that it's not, is just really unfortunate.
I'm going to go on a little tangent here.
Please.
I'm annoyed at the way even that the physical media market works now, because outside of, Warner Brothers, which does a great job, Warner Brothers does the best job of preserving, remastering, and re-releasing on physical media their archive, which is why this Warner deal is so nerve-wracking. One of the reasons why this Warner deal is so nerve-wracking. Universal does it to a lesser extent. Paramount, MGM, they all do okay. Warner does it the best. The outside of that, what you have is these boutique labels. And what they are mostly going after, because the market is so horror-driven, so much of what drives people to buy DVDs are horror freaks who like having a lot of crap to put on display. And more power to them, because every horror movie you can think of, every crappy B movie that's ever existed, now exists in like 4K, Dolby surround. It's crazy how well preserved the history of horror is. But foreign films, to a much lesser extent, I mean, Criterion does a pretty good job of this. I mean, they do the best job, but even still, there's a lot out there. And there are a few other labels that are also doing like a solid job. Actually, I think Deaf Crocodile, which we talk about on this podcast a lot, does a good job with animated films and like weird foreign films. But older foreign films like this, I don't know. Maybe they think there's no audience, but like clearly the three of us had a huge reaction to this movie. So there's a market for it. I would buy it in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
The Polish Film Archive has done all the work. It's been remastered. It looked amazing on the stream I was watching. Yeah. And I saw a YouTube video of what it looked like before the remaster and after, and it looked bad. So thank you, Poles. You've done a wonderful job. Give us the movie on disc now.
It's time. We need it.
Yeah, we did talk about the awards of the movie. It didn't really get any much attention in the United States, but it was a nominee for the BAFTA Film Award for the best. The award was called Best Film from Any Source.
Oh, right.
So maybe but it was nominated for that. It was nominated at the Venice Film Festival. It was, the Grand International Award, their big award at the Venice Festival. And the New York Film Critics Circle did nominate it in their awards for the best foreign language film. So it was at least recognized in a couple of places at the time, but obviously not on a huge scale.
Jake, give us, where does this movie sit in your favorite movies of the 1940s?
Well, like we so often do on this, I did my list and everything, and then now we've talked about the movie. It's like I feel like I've underrated it. But where I do have it on my list right now, I've got 37 films on my list, and Last Stage ranks at number 16. It's right in front of The Red Shoes and right behind Brief Encounter, which even if I did underrate it, that's still pretty good company to be in. And then the other one, Not Wanted, is lower lower on my list. It's a solid movie, but yeah, doesn't not in that upper echelon.
Yeah, so I'm a little more correct that I have The Last Stages. It's in my top 10. It's my number 10 movie of the 1940s, right behind The Great Dictator and right in front of Nightmare Alley. And what did we watch? Not Wanted. Not Wanted. I have 40 movies on this list, and Not Wanted comes in, I would say, number 35, right after Ichabod and Mr. Toad, and right before another Soviet film called The Lost Letter, which is just like a bonkers animated movie about a Cossack who needs to get a letter and has to a Tsarina and has to deal with demons along the way. Old Soviet animation is insane.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I don't want to get your hopes up. It's a 3-star movie. It's like it's not the best, but it's still just like crazy that it exists.
Right.
Maren, what are some of your favorite female-led movies? Obviously not of this era, but just like period.
If I'm going to go with maybe it's not female directed, but like still the vibes are there.
Sure.
I think All About Eve is just one of those ones, like everyone should see it, right? It's a great picture. I love Bette Davis in that. I'm a huge Katharine Hepburn fan. So I think she's really powerful. And actually, Dorothy Arzner helped discover Katharine.
I didn't know that.
But anyway, so what would be my favorites? I do love her in Bringing Up Baby. I love a screwball comedy. Her in The Lion in Winter. If you've never seen that one, that is a great watch. She's older. She plays Eleanor of Aquitaine. That is a phenomenal film. I've just gotten recently, I got really into Leave Her to Heaven. Have you guys watched that one either? Jean Tierney, so The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, right? So she's in that one. The Leave Her to Heaven, she plays a psychopath. She plays like a crazy person, and she is really good at being bad, which I love to see. Working Girl, Moonstruck. I mean, I'm a child of the 80s, so I'm going to pick a lot of those that I think are just amazingly female-led. We're going to hang up, and I'm going to think of like 12 more. I have them on my list, so they are on my TikTok, so you guys can check those out. But
I was just going to say, make sure that you tell people what your TikTok is called.
Yeah, so it's Maren Movie Mom. So it's Maren and then Movie Mom. And I just posted about classic holiday films that I think are like really cool to see. So also Barbara Stanwyck, we got to talk about, she is so cool. So I like The Lady Eve. If you've never seen that, that's a classic. She's great in that. I also really love Christmas in Connecticut. And that one is way ahead of its time, especially with gender dynamics. That's a great watch. I'm also, I'm a big Marilyn Monroe fan. I think she's underrated as a comedic actress, so I would definitely put her out there as well. So Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is my personal favorite of hers. I love the physical comedy that she gets to do. I think she, again, was underrated for that. So that would be another one. But yeah, I love all the oldies,
Amazing. All right, so make sure you check out Maren Movie Mom on TikTok, and we'll be back next week with a look at 2 films from the 1950s.